You are listening to the Liquid Shape Podcast with your host, Cody Perez.
Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of Liquid Shape Podcast. I am your host, Cody Perez. On this first episode, we're going to talk about what this podcast is about and what the goal is and what the purpose is, I should say. And then we're going to talk a lot about me and who I am so you can get to know me. So let's talk about what this podcast is going to be about. Liquid Shape is a podcast centered on real conversations with real people, no matter their background, upbringing, or path in life. Everyone carries a story, and those stories are constantly shifting, shaping us through experiences both beautiful and painful. Each episode explores the highs and lows that define us, personal struggles, life-altering moments, victories, losses, trauma, growth, and self-discovery. Guests will open up about what they've faced, how they've survived it, how it changed them, and the after effects those experiences left behind mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. This is a space for honesty without judgment. Some conversations will be inspiring, others heartbreaking, uncomfortable, hilarious, or deeply relatable, but all of them are human experiences. Liquid Shape is designed to make listeners feel seen, understood, and less alone, pulling on every emotion and reminding us that no matter how different our lives are or may seem, we're all shaped by something. I've been wanting to do a podcast for many, many years, but for one reason or another, I've never found the time to make it happen. A lot of it had to do with me being worried about getting canceled or saying the wrong thing or being misunderstood. But I've always been a person that really doesn't care what other people think at the end of the day. So I said, screw it. Let's just make this happen. And that being said, I don't want people to be confused and think that this podcast is going to be music related necessarily or about my band. I do play in a heavy metal band, American Overdose. So I will talk about that since it's a huge part of my life, but that's not going to be the primary focus of this podcast. As I mentioned, I want to talk more open conversations about all walks of life. And so I want to make sure that people are aware of that, before they hit the, stop button and think that, oh, this is just going to be an American Overdose thing and blah, 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 blah. So I will talk about the band from time to time on each episode, like I said, but it's not going to be the primary focus. So why do a podcast? Well, I'm a person that loves to speak their mind and share my thoughts and opinions and give my advice from my experiences. And I also like to help and encourage others to speak their mind and share their thoughts, regardless if I agree or disagree with it. And so I feel this platform is going to be just another way that people can do that other than social media. They can go on a podcast and we can have open conversations about different things. I also love conversating with people, and I love getting to know people. I'm a very confident person, so I know what my strengths and what my weaknesses are. And one of those things that I know that I need to work on as a weakness is my active listening and listening to understand. So I'm hoping that with this podcast, speaking with people of all different backgrounds and different walks of life, I can work on that. Also learn a lot about different people. Everyone has a purpose on this earth, and I want to make sure that I leave my mark on this world when I'm gone. I know through music, I will live forever because my thoughts, my opinions, my lyrics, my emotions, everything is put out there. And long after I'm gone, my music will still be out there. But I feel this is just going to be another way that I'm able to leave my mark on this world, because with this podcast, I want to encourage people to be better, encourage people to make positive changes in their lives. I want to help people be the voice and be a person that people can say, you know what, that guy did it. I can do something with my life. Or the guests that I have on the podcast can help influence and change people and inspire people to do great things. So I feel with this podcast, I can leave just another way for me to leave a mark on this world when I'm long gone. My dad was a radio DJ for many, many years when I was a kid growing up, and I was always very intrigued by him doing the radio work and being a radio personality. And he sometimes would put me on the air as a kid, and I loved it. I loved it, so that I feel this is just another way that I'm connected to my father. So I'm excited about being here doing a podcast and speaking out and talking with people. Now, a little about me. Let's go ahead and let's talk about who I am, since, a lot of you know who I am. A lot of you may think you know who I am. And the goal is to reach people that don't know who I am to get to know me. I'm 39 years old. I live in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, and I've been born and raised here. So I've lived here all of my life, and I'm a musician. I've lived, breathed, and sleep everything music. That's what my drive is every day. But I always tell people I'm an entertainer. I like to entertain people. I'll do whatever it takes to bring a smile out of somebody or get a rise out of somebody or a reaction. I love getting people all riled up or making other people laugh and that kind of stuff. So I can definitely take one for the team, make myself look like a complete fool and just put a smile on someone's face. Or a lot of times I like to make people think. So I'll question things or I'll push buttons to an extent where it upsets people, but I'm not doing that to cause frustration. A lot of times it's because I want you to think for yourself and not just necessarily think what other people force you to think. Open up your mind a little. So that has a lot to do with who I am and what my purpose is. I like to entertain. I like to make people think. And I always tell people I'm first an entertainer before I am a musician. I don't even consider myself a great singer, but I can kind of do it and people have been drawn to it. So I do it and I put my heart and soul into it. So with this first episode, I'm going to talk about, a lot of personal stuff about myself, my growing up and kind of set the tone of what I want my future guests to do when they come onto the show. It's going to leave room for people to be vulnerable, including myself, and just open up. So we'll start from when I was a kid. Let's go ahead and start from when growing up. I was raised by my mom and my grandma. My grandma was pretty much my secondary mother. I learned to speak Spanish. My brother and I learned to speak Spanish because she only spoke Spanish, and lucky for us, that's helped us along the way with jobs and just getting around and appreciating our Mexican background and culture. I'm very proud Mexican, and I learned so much from my grandma. She and my mom are the two hardest workers I've ever met in my life. So a lot of the reason why my grandma raised us was because my mom was always working 2 or 3 jobs at a time, and hard labor jobs where she's on her feet and getting paid crap wages. And so she's making money to provide for us, and my grandma would take care of us instead of us being at a babysitter or childcare of some strangers. My grandma was one of the greatest women I've ever met in my life, and I love her and I miss her so much. I lost her in 2014, and it was one of the hardest things that I ever dealt with. But she taught me hard work ethic and how to be a good person and stick to your word and stick to your guns. And a lot of who I am today, I owe to her. Miss you, Grandma. My mom just was a great example of hard work and dedication and putting your kids first. My mom, I love her dearly and lucky I still have her and she's still around and she's still a very hard worker. She's out there busting her butt off every day. And she was a great role model for my brother and I growing up. And she luckily never got into any addictions and didn't drink or do drugs or smoke or any of that kind of stuff. And she always pushed us to do our best and not to get into that kind of stuff. My dad was an alcoholic. Oh, he was a great man. I don't want to sit here and talk trash about my dad, but my dad was an alcoholic and he messed around with drugs, smoked a lot of weed and messed around with coke and God knows what else. But my dad was abusive. One time I remember, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, I had to stab him in the back with a pen to get off my mom because he was choking her. He was the nicest guy, but when he drank, and he drank every day, he eventually turned into this other person that I did not like and did not love, and it scared the hell out of all of us. That was very hard watching that. Eventually, it is what ended up killing him was his alcoholism. He died of liver failure when I was 19 years old. My dad was in and out of our lives a lot. He was always there, sort of. My mom and him left each other when I was 7 years old. And, he would come around from time to time. We'd spend time with him and whatnot. So he did try to provide and he did try to be there for us and what have you, but wasn't always around. Not that we really made the effort either to go look for him. We'd make him come to us. So there was a lot of that. Growing up, I swore I never wanted to be like him. I never wanted to, obviously I would never put my hands on a woman, and lucky to this day, I can stay true to that and never have put my hands on any woman, period, because I'm so against that, especially after seeing my dad do that to my mom. And I also swore that I would never get into alcohol or drugs or any of that stuff. And that part I did fail in. And that's been a huge life-changing thing for me and big part of why I'm sober now. I'm now 2 years sober and very thankful for that. So with my dad being an alcoholic, I always told myself I was not going to get into drugs or alcohol or any of that stuff when I was a kid. And, I was really good about not doing that. Even when I was, 12 and 13, I remember hearing about kids around my age that were doing that. I stayed away from those kids. I was like, no, I don't want to be involved in that. I did have my first sip of beer, I think when I was like 11. I tried it just because my friend was doing it. One of my best friends was doing it. So we sipped just to see what it was. And I was not, I did not like the taste at all. It was disgusting. So I always swore up and down that I was not going to hang around people that were doing that and that I was not going to do it. And I avoided being around people that were drinking. 12 and 13, when you think about it, is a crazy age for kids to be doing that kind of stuff. But when you get into middle school, you'd be surprised at how many kids eventually get their hands on that kind of stuff. And I just remember hearing about parties that were happening, and I have no interest in being around people that do that. Then comes high school, of course. And when high school came around, I still, freshman year, I was not about drinking. I was not about drugs or any of that. And I always said, don't want to be around that kind of stuff. And I knew going in that it's more common for people to try and experiment as you get older and you're in your teenage years. But I swore up and down that I wouldn't give into that. Then, of course, a female came into my life that I fell madly in love with. And you know how it is when you first get so into somebody, especially at that young of an age, 14 years old. I fell in love with this girl that ended up being my high school sweetheart. And she liked to party. And of course, because I wanted to show off and I wanted to be cool and I wanted to be hip with it, I eventually started, drinking and partying with friends and hanging out with people that partied. And, just so I had something that I don't know if I want to say show off, but just kind of be cool. It was weird because when we first started talking, she didn't really talk about partying. She kind of did it on the down low. And then she kind of hinted, I found out about it and she hinted at it. And then that's when at first I was giving her crap about it and I didn't like the fact that she did and whatnot. And eventually I ended up giving into doing it myself and drinking and hanging out with friends. I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone and any blame. The fact that I gave into the peer pressures of my friends and girls that I liked or whatever, to start drinking, that's all my own fault. That's my own decision. And I take full responsibility for that. It's just funny how I think back how against it I was. And then eventually what happened with all of it and myself happened. So throughout high school, I did struggle with partying a lot and experimenting. I also swore that I would never smoke pot. And I think I was 16 years old the first time I tried it with one of my close friends at the time, who was my drummer for a band that I was playing in. At the time, I swore up and down after drinking that I'm like, I'll never try drugs. Drinking's one thing. Drugs are a whole other thing that I will never, ever do. Well, I became curious because going to concerts and all that, I always smelt the weed and I thought that smells great, but I don't want to feel like those people. I don't want to be feeling all slow and my mind not being there. And who knows what that's going to lead to. Eventually I gave in and I tried pot, smoked weed for the first time when I was 16 years old. And I remember that me and my best friend at the time, we smoked with our friend that had it and we didn't feel high. It was funny. We smoked some weed at his house and then we had to walk back to my best friend's house because it was past curfew. And we're walking down this road, this long road. And I just remember we were talking to each other back and forth, laughing about how we didn't feel anything and how stupid that this thing that everyone rants and raves about how great it is not doing anything to us. But at the same time, we were like, is that stop sign at the end of the road by your house? Does it seem like we're never going to get there? So looking back, I'm like, we probably were. We had this body high, head high, something. I have no idea. We probably did get high. We just didn't realize it. It was our first time doing it. So we probably didn't realize what it was. And maybe we thought being high meant or made you feel something completely different. Who knows? But I do recall that we kept laughing about how we didn't feel anything. And that probably means that we were high, thinking back. So my sophomore year, I feel like I started hanging out with the crowd that liked to party a lot. And I would skip school. And I remember hanging out with another person I became really good friends with that he was always in and out of trouble and getting kicked out of his house. And he'd come and stay at my house and we would end up getting bags of weed and smoking out of an apple and laughing at crazy movies and listening to music and just hanging out with different girls and what have you, doing the social thing. Well, my junior year, the first serious incident, I should say, where I damn near died I got a hold of some alcohol, and I won't put anyone on blast and say it was this person or that person, but I ended up getting a hold of some alcohol from an older, close person to me at the time. And they bought me a fifth of Monarch vodka, and it was a fifth 151, which anyone out there that knows what that is, that stuff will kill you. It's flammable. It's not meant to be taken in shots. It's meant to be literally just you pour a little splash on top of a drink and you light it up. And that was a big mistake on my part. And I don't even remember telling him I wanted that. I think I just said, here's some money. We're looking for some booze because tonight's homecoming and I'm taking out my high school sweetheart and I'm going to one of my good friends at the time and his date. So I get the bottles of alcohol. I happen to have a lot of family in town that weekend from out of state. And my buddy and I were drinking in my room, getting ready for the homecoming, and we're taking shots. And I got the bright idea to offer a haircut to my buddy because I used to cut my own hair. I still do. I cut my own hair, and I got the idea of cutting his hair because he was complaining about his hair being long and he wanted to look good and sharp for the homecoming. So I'm like, hey, I cut my own hair. I've cut other friends' hair. I'm going to go ahead and line you up, buddy, with a fade. He didn't know how drunk I was at the time. And so I jacked up his hair, man. It was so bad. I just butchered it completely. I didn't know what I was doing, even though if I would have been on my right mind, I would have cut his hair perfectly as it should have been. Screw up his hair. We're taking shots and we drank about pretty much all of the 151 and half, I think, of the Monarch vodka. By this point, my girlfriend at the time showed up with her friend, which was my buddy's date. And then we had another buddy of ours show up and he had borrowed a Porsche or something from somebody. I have no idea. And so he showed up. We all start taking shots and drinks. And I get to the point where I'm just completely sloppy and just drop dead almost to the point where I couldn't even wake up on the ground. So by that point, everyone's trying to wake me up. We get up. We go outside. I don't know how I walked past my family. My family's all out in the living room and I'm talking aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma, mom, everybody. And I got past them. They didn't realize what was going on in the room or in my room. And as we're going outside, the air hit me and boom, I was on a whole nother level of being drunk. And the girls were already annoyed with us because we were all drunk. And I think they were probably just slightly buzzed. Who knows? And so one of the girls was driving. And they were, well, we're going to leave. You guys are just going to be sloppy messes and what have you. So ran after them. And from what they tell me, because I don't remember any of this whatsoever, I ran into the car. My face hit the window and I slid down like they do in cartoons. And they laughed because they're just like, oh my God, this guy's such an idiot, whatever. And next thing you know, I was not getting up. I laid there and they were concerned at that point. And so they went and they said that I was not breathing or something. So they went and told my mom what was going on. And my brother was happening to get home from being out with some friends and he saw me on the ground. He picked me up, went inside. They called 911. The ambulance came. They pumped my stomach to try to get the alcohol out and nothing was really working. I wasn't coming to. And so they rushed me on the ambulance to the hospital. And I don't know what exactly they did, but they got me to come to life. And I just remember waking up being in the worst pain ever. I was hurting beyond levels that I can even describe to you guys. And I remember them telling me that I was 3 times the legal limit of someone that was 21 years old. So I should have been dead. I think I was blood alcohol level. So I should have been dead. And I was lucky that they found me and they took me to the hospital and they took it serious because I could have been dead right there. And that would have been the end of me. There would have been no Cody up there. After that, I felt so bad. I felt extremely horrible, not just like my body and physically, but emotionally and mentally. I just was so much regret and so much anger towards myself and for letting myself get to that point. And they gave me some sort of medication that would prevent me from being able to drink alcohol. I swore up and down that I was never going to do it again. And at 16 years old, that's a big commitment to make. And I ended up getting a ticket for MIP. I got a distributing alcohol to minors ticket because I don't know how that makes sense that someone that's underage that's providing alcohol to others can get a ticket when I'm not even of age myself. But for one reason or another, I guess you can. So I got a ticket for that. My friends that went to the homecoming, one of the buddies that came in the Porsche, I think he ended up getting an MIP as well. Luckily, he didn't kill anybody in the car. And, it was one of those things where it was a lot of bad things could have happened that night because of stupid decisions that I made that I should have been better about thinking long-term what the consequences of that being. But you're young, you don't know. It's one of those things where you're experimenting, and when you're young, you think you know everything and you think that you have everything on the up and up. I ended up having to go to court for it. I went through a scared straight program where I was sent to the Salem prison, along with other kids that were my age, spoke to prisoners that were in jail for life. And they basically told us their life stories and how it all started with drugs and alcohol for them. It was real eye-opening and scary at the same time. And then I was also there with a bunch of kids that were doing crazy things. One of them there had set a whole apartment complex on fire. He was an arsonist. So I felt bad about that. I was ordered to complete drug and alcohol classes, and I was ordered to do community service and pay fines and all that kind of stuff. So long story short, I didn't drink for 2 years. Even just the smell of alcohol, I would get sick and grossed out. But then I got into a stoner phase because I was thinking, all right, well, I still want to be social and I want to be able to hang out with my friends and quote unquote party and whatnot. So that was my phase where I started smoking a lot of weed. I ended up my junior year and my senior year was smoking pot with some friends, and that was getting me in all sorts of trouble. I had just got my license and I was constantly getting tickets for driving with friends, because that's right when the rule came out that if you were the first 6 months, you're not allowed to drive with anyone unless it's your legal guardian. And I was driving around the car full of my high school friends. We'd skip school and we'd go off to the beach or to a friend's house and smoke weed or party or whatever. You know what I mean? It was just reckless. That takes me to another time I almost died. So 6 months after my alcohol poisoning, I am driving out to a swimming hole with some friends. And this time I borrowed my mom's Jeep. Growing up, I had my first car was a 1997 Mitsubishi Eclipse. It's burgundy. It was the coolest car at the school for sure. Like I definitely had the fast, sporty car, and it was right when Fast and the Furious was popular, and it was just the coolest car there at the high school. Well, my car was always in and out of the shop. There was always issues with it. And so lucky for us on this hot summer day, my car was out of commission, and I wanted to go to the river with some friends and go swimming. And I borrowed my mom's Jeep. She let me take her Jeep Cherokee. And I wasn't used to driving a automatic. My car was a manual. So, that's an excuse for why it happened, but it kind of tripped me up driving the car when it was an automatic and I was used to manual. Anyways, so I took my mom's Jeep and picked up my buddies, and we went out to an area out in the woods of Silverton, an area that I was not very familiar with myself personally, but a buddy of mine knew an area for a swimming hole out there in the outskirts. So at the same time, he tells me, oh, I know where these pot plants are at. We should stop by there and pick some. So essentially, we're going to be stealing weed from somebody's property, which again, was a stupid move by dumbass teenagers. Well, we got lost looking for the swimming hole and looking for this place that had this field that supposedly had weed just growing. And we get lost, and I'm cruising. Didn't realize I was going 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, or whatever I was speeding at the time. And all of a sudden, this big hill that goes up drops down a really steep hill road. And then it makes an S turn, and that S turn is 15 miles per hour. Well, I was already going 90, and I was like, well, there's no way in hell that I'm going to be able to brake in time to make this S turn. So I'm like, screw it. So I tried to slow down and lost complete control. The brakes locked up on me. So everyone grabbed the handlebars. We made the S. We tried to make the S turn. We almost made the turn, and instead we did 360 because the brakes locked up and it skidded around at a 360, and we ended up off this hill and went down like 200. I think they said it was 230 feet down. And we ended up rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling till we got almost to this little creek thing. Tree stopped us. The car was completely caved in. Luckily, I was sober. Everyone in the vehicle was sober. I was the first one to wake up, and then I heard this type of thing, and I watched enough movies to have it in my mind that car was going to blow up. So I start waking everybody up. I start waking everybody up, and I'm like, hey, we need to get out of the car now. We need to get out of the car now. Unbuckle ourselves. The Jeep landed semi on my arm, but the hood of it ended up on a tree stump that was below. So the Jeep wasn't technically on my arm, but it was enough where my arm, when we were rolling, went outside the window, broke through the window, and I ended up having to put it in a sling because it was spraying. Luckily, everyone just left with barely any scratches. I think one of my buddies had a broken arm and we had some bruises on our face. We get out and this person on top of the hill yells, "Hey, is everyone all right?" And we're like, "Yeah, I think so." He's like, "I called it 911. Ambulance is on their way." So we're like freaking out because we were just like dazed. We didn't realize what had just happened or how it happened. It was just my brain was just the adrenaline just set me off on a whole nother level. And so once we got out, we were trying to climb the hill, and one of my buddies goes, "Oh shit, I left my weed pipe inside your vehicle, inside the vehicle." So he runs in there to grab it. We get up the hill, and by the time we get up this big old hill, the ambulance shows up maybe 5 or 10 minutes after that. And they ask us who was in there, and they ask us, is there any survivors? Because the Jeep was completely caved in and beat in. It almost looked like it was totaled, obviously, but it looked like there wouldn't have been survivors in that Jeep. And we let them know, no, everyone luckily is out and we're all alive and we're all right here. They ended up taking me in a stretcher because I was in a lot of pain. I was in a daze and I was bruised up and beat up and what have you. They took us all in. They obviously did tests on us to make sure that we were not under the influence of alcohol or drugs or what have you. And after that, it just scared the hell out of me. I was like, oh God, that's the second time I almost die in less than a year. So that was another time where just it opened up my eyes and I was, all right, I'm hanging out with people that are getting me in trouble and I'm making bad decisions. And again, I'm not a person to point blame on anybody. My own decisions are my own fault. I choose to put myself around people like that. I choose to smoke weed or, drive with people in the car. Those are all my own decisions. It's my fault. And at the time, my girlfriend that I mentioned earlier, that was my high school girlfriend and my first love for all of my high school career. She always used to get on my ass about the people I was hanging out with. She would get mad and say, she was going to leave me and make threats. And she was a good girl. She convinced me eventually that I needed to get my act together. And that leads me to a next big thing that was happening in my life back then. So as good of a girl she was, we were bad for each other. I was a very, very jealous young guy, very egotistical, very controlling. And she was rebellious. She was independent and she liked to do things her way and how she wanted them done. And she had expectations of me that I wasn't necessarily meeting up to, like being better in school and being a better boyfriend, being out with her and spending my time with her and what have you. So I had a very toxic relationship in high school, a lot of ins and outs and getting back together, breaking up, hurting each other. And I think that shaped a lot of what came shortly after that. So we continued dating into my early 20s, and eventually the inevitable happened where we both kind of went our own ways. She started to see somebody else. I was doing music. She didn't like me doing the music thing, and I told her I was not going to give up music. She wanted to have a family and do the family thing, and that was not anywhere in my line of sight of goals or any of that. So we went our own separate ways, and I was single for the first time for about 5 or 6 years, I would say. I was single, and those were some crazy, crazy, crazy years for me because that's when I really had my heart ripped out and broken from that relationship. And I said I was no longer going to give love to anybody else, and it was all going to be about me. And I was going to do what I wanted to, and I was going to put myself 100% into my band. I was going to do everything I could to make the band something bigger than my mind could even imagine. And I was going to show her and everybody else that doubted me that I could do something with myself and with the band and with the music and take it to another level. So I started American Overdose at this point. Another thing that drove me to start my own band was I had constantly been in and out of bands. I would put my all into the music and into what we were doing and promoting and committing to going to shows and practices and all that. And every time something would fall apart, people were not committed enough or the band would fall apart and just it wouldn't be taken as serious as I wanted it to be. And so finally, after doing that for many years, I'm going to start my own band. And that's when American Overdose was born. I worked with a local producer here in Portland, and we created a lot of killer songs of music that influenced me from growing up, all the new metal stuff. And when we had enough material, I ended up finding musicians on the interwebs, Craigslist, MySpace, all of that. And my brother, I won't talk too much about my brother since I plan to have him on an episode and he can talk about his life. So I won't go too deep into him about his life. But my brother at the time was going through some crazy stuff in his life. And so I thought that it would be a good distraction to get him involved in my band that I had just started, American Overdose. I knew that he liked a lot of the same music that I liked. We used to go to concerts growing up, and we loved the same bands, the same style of music. And I always remember hearing him singing along to Korn and Slipknot, and I always thought that he had a cool voice and it would go well with mine. So that's how Pito came to be and be the other vocalist in American Overdose. I was looking out for him and trying to get him to change some of the things that were going on in his life and make better choices, even though I wasn't making the best choices in my life at that time. This was a time between 2008 and 2000, I would say towards the end of 2013. I was single. I was dating a lot of women. I was in and out of, I wasn't even in relationships. I was just in and out of, what do the kids call it nowadays? Ships. I hate that word, by the way. I hate that people use that, but I'll say the old school way, which was a lot of friends with benefits. It was friends with a lot of different girls that I did not commit to. A lot of them were in love with me, but a lot of them were very toxic too. So I can't say that I made bad decisions or any of that. One of the girls that I met during that time frame ended up actually being my girlfriend that I currently have, which is Mariah. I met her online through Facebook. Actually, I was going to say MySpace, but it wasn't MySpace. It was Facebook. We started talking and we hung out, and we both were in our crazy 20s at that time. So I always felt there was a special connection between me and her, and that there was something more than there was with the other girls that I had been hanging out with. And I was surrounding myself with. And so, but I also knew that at that time in my life, I was so crazy, and I knew she was kind of crazy too. So I was like, this wouldn't be good. So let's just keep it at friends. And so we never took it anything further than just being friends and semi sort of flirty. And you know how that goes in your 20s when you're drinking and partying and all that. So after that, I kept doing the band thing. I was playing shows constantly. There was a point when we started the band and we were playing sometimes up to 6 times a night. We would drive anywhere from Southern Oregon all the way up to Seattle and Tacoma, Washington, constantly just playing shows and spreading the word, going to concerts of bigger bands that were coming through town, us handing out flyers and CDs and just spreading the word about us, just whoring the music and whoring the band name out to the point where we were annoying people. But that got us a lot of attention. That got us a lot of buzz. We've opened up for so many so many big name bands that we grew up listening to. We opened up for a lot of festivals and a lot of just cool things that we got to do that I know for a fact many people will never be able to say they did. And we were kind of the low budget underground version of Motley Crue with the band when during this time frame, because we always had the women around. We were partying a lot, drinking, and eventually I ended up doing drugs too. I mean, I was taking Molly, doing a lot of blow, and these are not things that I'm proud of. I'm not gonna sit here and glorify it or anything like that, but this is a reality of things that I did when I was partying in my 20s and being crazy. Did some touring around the country and playing festivals during this time frame. A lot of self-destruction. There was so many times during this time frame where I would block out and not remember what exactly happened. And luckily I had friends and band members that cared for me and took care of me and made sure I wasn't going to jail or hurting myself or hurting anybody. And, I'm thankful for that. Big shout out to all those people that were in my life at that time frame and looking out for me and taking care of me. And eventually, when we came back from touring, ended up on that last tour that I did in 2013, I ended up meeting someone that I ended up dating and getting with for 7 years. And that was something I never thought would happen on tour, falling in love and bringing back somebody with me. And that person ended up moving out here, had a serious relationship with me. We had a lot of ups and a lot of downs, a lot of downs. And a lot of that had to do with the partying and the drinking and the drugs and all that ego and all that craziness that comes along with being in your 20s and early 30s and not caring. So that was another chapter in my life that just got crazier for me and drove me down this path of self-destruction and depression and anger and self-hatred and all these ugly things that I feel shaped who I am today, made me who I am today. That relationship ended up ending multiple times, I guess, technically, because I ended up, we'll just get to it. I ended up losing her to another person that she ended up leaving me for, which at the time I thought that was the worst thing ever. It was a blessing and a curse, but I was heartbroken over it, and I did it to myself at the same time. I also feel it was a lot of back and forth now that I look back on it. And I have no resentment whatsoever. Everything happens for a reason. Everything worked out as it should. I know that she's happy with her life and I'm very happy with mine. I have no anger for her or for anyone that I had in my past, including the girlfriend from high school. I always wish everyone that's came in and out of my life nothing but the best. Doesn't mean I want you in my life. Doesn't mean that I think about you or anything like that. I literally I'm one of those people that once you're out of my life, you're out of my life, and I don't hold on to resentment or anger or any of that kind of stuff. Because I think it just does you much worse in the long run when you hold on to that stuff. You're a prisoner to that stuff, and it's no good, and it causes you to make bad decisions, and you don't appreciate the things that you have currently in your life when you're living like that. So I've lost a lot of friends along the way between growing up and even in my 20s and 30s that have came in and out of my life, long-term friendships. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you're not serving a purpose in my life in a good way, there's no point in keeping you around. But again, it's not that you're now hated by me or I hold resentment or I wish you harm or bad or any of that. I actually wish everybody that's came around my life the best. And it's the reason I do is because you were in my life for one reason or another, whether that was a lesson to be learned or, you saved my life in one way or another in some form or fashion. I'm thankful for the moments that I had with the people that have came in and out of my life. And so with that being said, after that recent relationship had ended, I thought that I was going to fix myself up and I was going to be better, but I feel I did worse because I was partying even harder and continuously doing drugs. The band had taken a hiatus from 2018 or the end of 2018, and we hadn't done anything. We had no practice spot. We didn't practice, lost the guitar player that I had / producer at the time. And I ended up just focusing on the partying, man. That's all I cared about was partying, drinking, doing blow, hanging out with women, dating around, not really committing. But at the same time, I think I was telling myself that I wanted a date. I was telling myself I didn't want a date, but in my head, I want to find someone to love and care about. But I swore up and down that I wasn't going to get involved again. And we all know how that ends. So with that being said, I ended up reconnecting with Mariah, my current girlfriend. And I remember the beginning of our relationship, man. It was a lot of partying too. I jumped right back into how we were. We were drinking a lot, but I was madly in love, and I am madly in love with her. But I just remember that part of it was I was madly in love with her, and I'm like, screw it, let's just make it happen. Like, let's go ahead and do this. And she may or may not admit it. She asked me out, for the record. Sitting there at breakfast the next day after we reconnected. It was like when we got together, it was like we had not lost touch or not had it was like we had just hung out the day before, even though we had really not technically talked since 2012. It's how quickly, and this was in 2021, end of 21, New Year's Eve, I should say. But it felt like literally we had not gone that long without talking to each other. It was crazy. We reconnected and just were attached to each other and it was great. I love it. But we kept partying and eventually got to the point where I got sick and tired of the drinking. I got sick and tired of feeling gross the next day after drinking from hurling and being hungover, my head hurting, not knowing what I did or said the night before, all that kind of stuff. I was sick and tired of doing that. And I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm quitting. So I quit September 17th, 2023, stopped drinking. And I have not drank since. And I've been tempted. I stopped doing drugs, weed, cigarettes, coke in November of 2022. With all of that came challenges. I lost some friends along the way, and I don't know if it's because they think that I am not cool because I don't do any of those things, or I may not be fun, or maybe they keep me around because I sunk down to that level and they could laugh about it, or I don't know what the case may be, but I feel I lost touch with people because of it. But I also have a lot of people that stuck around, which I'm very thankful for, because I am still the crazy Cody Perez. Just now I'm coherent, a lot better of a person, a lot better of a friend. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying. I'm reliable. And I feel I'm a completely different person in a better way. I don't judge my friends that drink or party. I've said this a million times. If you feel like you don't have a problem drinking or using or whatever it is that you do, that's on you. Who am I to judge? Who am I to say you do or don't? I feel personally that a lot more people have issues that don't realize it, because it's a lot easier to say, oh, I could quit. I could quit whenever I want. It's a whole nother thing to actually quit and actually do it and actually apply it and actually do it long term. It's a whole different thing. The beginning months of me doing it were hard. It was challenging, but at the same time it wasn't, because I kept myself around people that were drinking. I kept myself around atmospheres where people were drinking and partying still. I was still going to bars. I was still hanging out with people that partied and smoked and did whatever. And I think that might have helped influence me not to do it, because I wasn't making that big of a change as far as the people I was hanging around. I wasn't changing where I could go or where I couldn't go. I didn't feel like I was locked in this prison where I can't go somewhere where there's alcohol. And everyone's different. I always tell people, I'm like, there's no blueprint that I can say, this is how you get sober or this is what's going to make you sober. For everybody, it's different. Some people rely on going to meetings. Some people go into religion. Some people cannot go around people that are drinking. They can't even be around alcohol or a place that sells alcohol. And that's all fine. Whatever works for you, whatever you need to do to make yourself better, I highly encourage it. I highly suggest that you try different things to see what works for you. For me, I had to be around the crazy people partying. I had to go to places that were there's alcohol sales and that and what have you, because if I changed that, I wouldn't be able to be in a band. How many musicians are sober out there? It's like, it's not a common thing. And it would really change like a lot in my life, to the point where it'd make it more challenging for me, I think, to quit if I was to do that and if I was to make those rules. So again, for anyone out there that's struggling with alcohol or substance abuse, there is hope. I'm an example of someone that was a total party animal. You can go back and see all my posts and pictures I used to post. I actually deleted all of those posts, but for anyone that knows me knows that I used to party a lot. It was nonstop. It was constantly. I could party till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning and still go to work. I could still function the next day, not to my best of my abilities, obviously, but I would still go to my job. I would still be able to do the things that I needed to do, just at a very, very, very weak state. And I don't miss those days at all. I don't miss those days at all. And I don't glorify them. I think it's those things, doing those things and remembering how I felt and how the decisions I used to make, when I look back at those things, make me appreciate so much more on my sobriety and waking up and having a good sense of making good decisions that day and being a great friend, being a great boyfriend, being a great son, being a great brother, being a great band member, being a great everything. Like, am I the best? No, I still have a lot of room for growth and learning and progression and my imperfections and all of that. But I could tell you right now, it's a completely different person than who I was prior to me quitting all those things, the drinking and the drugs and all that. And I am more about keeping relationships and friendships and valuing those and valuing the time spent with my loved ones. Where before it was always constantly, when am I going to get to drink? When am I going to do drugs? Or when are we going to do this or that? It's like everything revolved around the drinking and the partying. And there were so many times that I missed out on concerts, missed out on special events, and all because of bad, stupid decisions that I've made because I was drinking or because I was partying. Did I have some good times? Of course I did. There's lots of great times that I had, but there was way more lows and way more regrets and way more damaging moments that were just not worth it. It is a part of who I am and what has made me who I am. So I have no regrets. I wouldn't change anything. I appreciate, like I said, the things that I have now much more because of hitting rock bottom and dealing with the craziness that I did, but I wouldn't change it. Like I said, people come in and out of your life. Moments happen for a reason. They shape us. They make us who we are. And because of it, people always ask me, do you think you'll ever drink again? Do you think you'll ever party again? Do you miss it? This and that. And the answer has always been no. I don't think I ever will. I don't have a desire to. I don't get tempted to. I had my moment. I was there. I've done it. And there's nothing about drinking or using that makes me think, oh, I could get away with it one more time, or I could try it and just do it, not make a habit of it. No, I don't care. There's nothing I miss about it. Nothing at all. And just seeing people and their stories that they have when they are out there doing their partying and all that stuff. It's just like, it's just reassuring to me. Like, yeah, I'm done with that. I don't need that. I don't need to have moments like that. I've had that. I've had crazier things than that happen. And your story right now sounds too crazy for me now that I just don't want to deal with that. I can be around it. A crazy thing happened when we were in Mexico this last trip that we took in October, where I asked for a pina colada without alcohol, and the bartender knew what I said because he repeated it back to me. And they bring me back a pina colada, non-alcoholic, supposedly. And I sip it, and right away I instantly knew. I was like, no, that has alcohol in it. And I had Mariah try it, and she's like, oh yeah, that's definitely alcohol. So I gave it back to the guy, and he's like, no, it doesn't have. I'm like, I know what alcohol tastes like, man. And she just tried it too, and there's alcohol in that. So I ended up ordering another one without alcohol. I had Mariah test it out, and it didn't have any alcohol. But that's just goes to show you that I'm done with it. There's nothing that I want to even mess with or get tempted by. I will drink occasionally some non-alcoholic beers just because I do like the taste of beer. But those things, I like, that's another thing where it's once in a blue moon, and it's not, I'd have to drink like 1,000 of them to probably even get a semi buzz. But that right there is my one thing that I'll do is I'll drink occasional non-alcoholic beers just to get the taste beer. But I think that's actually helped me to not want to drink. It's removed that temptation. Have not been tempted to smoke, have not been tempted to do weed or tempted to do coke or any of that shit. None of that stuff even remotely comes close to tempting me. Just thinking about the days that I used to do that, where we'd stay up for sometimes 3 or 4 days just partying on and off, just grosses me out thinking about that. There was many times where I thought I wasn't going to wake up, and I thought I was going to be dead, that I was going to be dead in my bed or dead on the floor in my kitchen or something. And it disgusts me thinking about those days. So I guess where I'm at with all of this is, how did all of this shape my life and who I am today? Well, I had to learn for myself. And I think that's sometimes what it takes for people to experience and live before they learn. And I told myself when I was a kid that I wasn't going to be like my dad. So my dad died of alcoholism, as I mentioned, from liver failure when I was 19 years old. And his dad, my grandpa, died of alcoholism when he was 45. For him to die at 45, man, that's crazy. And my dad died at 50. I don't want to carry on that tradition. I wouldn't even say the tradition. I would say that curse. You know what I mean? I don't want to carry that curse and my legacy be that I was an alcoholic, a druggie, a junkie that died of that. That's not how I want to go out. I want to leave my family proud that I was able to overcome that. And especially since I have a nephew, I want to be a good example to him. I love him to death. And I want him to see that there's more to life than all that stuff, and that I could be something else and he could be something else. And that there's, just because something's happened in your past doesn't mean you can't overcome it and use it as fuel to be bigger and better and badder and rise above it all. So that's enough information about me that I'm going to share for the time being. I know I just wanted to do a little intro about the podcast and who I am, and I am excited to get this going. I've been wanting to do a podcast for as long as I can remember, as I mentioned, and I'm excited to see what this turns into, because I have no idea what I'm doing, really. I didn't really ask anyone for help with this. I just kind of did a little research through YouTube videos, through Googling, and some AI stuff. So I'm going to learn along the way. It's going to be fun. I'm excited to see who I speak to, the stories that I hear, how that inspires me, how that inspires all of you out there. I just wanted to grab something and build it from the ground up, and I'm excited for that. That's the excitement I had when I first started the band American Overdose, and I'm excited this is just going to be another way for me to reach people and to relate with you all and to build, man. I'm excited. I'm very excited. So that concludes the very first episode of Liquid Shape Podcast. I hope you all have a fucking amazing day. Keep your heads up. Do good. Kick ass. I don't have a tagline yet, but I just want to leave you guys with some positive words, and have a great rest of your fucking day. Cody Perez out.
Be sure to find us on all social media platforms, follow and subscribe.